Torah time! The weekly portion. What's it all about? It really means something. What can it teach me? Turn it. Everything's in it. Hi, welcome to Torah time. This week's portion is called Miketz. And in Miketz, Pharaoh has a dream. And he calls upon all the magicians in the land to interpret his dream, but none of them can. And Pharaoh gets upset about this. But Pharaoh's chief cupbearer hears about the fact that Pharaoh has this dream, and he goes to Pharaoh and he says, you know, when you threw me in prison, I was with a Hebrew lad named Joseph, and he can interpret dreams. Well, Pharaoh called immediately for Joseph, and he said to Joseph, you will interpret my dream. And Joseph said, God will interpret the dream. Because, you know, Joseph was always a man of God, no matter what happened to him. Well, Joseph said that the 7 good cows in his dream represented 7 years, and the 7 bad cows represented 7 years. And he said the 7 healthy ears of grain represented 7 years, and the 7 empty ears of grain also represented 7 years. And what he surmised was that there would be 7 years of plenty in Egypt and then 7 years of famine. Well, Pharaoh ordered Joseph to gather all the grain and store it up so that during the 7 years of famine, there would be food and grain and enough to sustain them during that period of famine. In the meantime, Pharaoh said, will we ever find another man like this, like Joseph, a man of God? And Joseph was appointed to the highest place right under Pharaoh. And Pharaoh gave him an Egyptian name, clothed him with Egyptian clothing, and gave him a wife. And you know, that wife was the daughter of Potiphar, who was head of the guard. He was the one that bought Joseph from the Ishmaelites after his brothers had thrown him in the pit. It's kind of ironic. Well, anyway, Joseph and his wife had 2 sons, Manasseh, which means God has caused me to forget all my toil in my father's house, and Ephraim, which means God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. Because remember, Joseph was thrown in the pit and then ultimately thrown in prison. Well, sure enough, there ends up to be a famine in the land. But Joseph had stored up enough food and grain so that everything was fine in Egypt. Now Jacob, Joseph's father, hears that they were selling grain in Egypt, and he sent his sons, except for Benjamin, the youngest, to Egypt to buy provisions. Now, when the brothers get to Egypt, Joseph recognizes them, but his brothers don't recognize him, and Joseph hid himself from his brothers. Well, Joseph asked them all about themselves and their brothers. And when Joseph found out that Benjamin was back with his father, Joseph said, you must bring Benjamin to me, or else surely you will be convicted of being spies. Well, after the 3 days they were in jail, Joseph kept one of the brothers and sent the other brothers home with lots of provisions. But in addition to that, he ordered that all the money that the brothers had given him to buy grain be put back in their bags. Now, when the brothers got back to their father, they opened their bags and they were frightened because they saw this money and they knew for sure that Joseph was going to accuse them not only of being spies, but of being thieves. Well, Jacob didn't want to send the brothers back. He had already lost Joseph, he thought, and he didn't want to lose Benjamin, and Simeon was in Egypt in prison. But finally, because the famine got so bad, Jacob sent his brothers back, and he sent them with twice the amount of money that they had gone with, and with gifts for Joseph, because again, they were afraid. Now, when Joseph saw Benjamin, he was very grateful because he had been worried that the brothers would do the same thing to Benjamin that they had done to him. So Joseph ordered this wonderful meal for his brothers, and they ate and they were happy. So after the meal, Joseph orders that their sacks, the brothers' sacks, be filled with as much provision as possible, as much as they could fit. And he also orders that their money be put back in the sack. And Joseph says to his guards, "Put my goblet in the sack of Benjamin." Well, the brothers ride out of town, and Joseph has the guards chase after them because he kind of set them up. And when the guards come upon them, what do you think they find? They find Joseph's goblet in Benjamin's sack. Well, they're all brought back to Joseph, and Joseph says, "This one, Benjamin, will be my slave. The rest of you brothers, go back to your father in peace." That's the way the portion ends. It's kind of a cliffhanger because we want to know what happens next. But we got to wait for Torah next week, and we'll find out how the story continues. Well, that's it for Torah time. Shalom.
Torah time, the weekly portion. What's it all about? It really means something. What can it teach me? Turn it. Everything's in it.